Hi, it's Ellen from EVPL Oakland, back with the pack. Chapter Book Storytime Variety Pack. I'm so glad you're here today. I've got two fantastic books to share with you. I call them fantastic because they are books of fantasy. Books that take us to another time, another place. There may be some imaginary creatures that are coming right out of the author's head, and there might be a little magic too. Anything's possible. Let's take a look at our first book. It's called Children of the Fox, a Thieves of Shadow book by Kevin Sands. He has also written a series called the Blackthorn Key series, so if you've read that one and liked them, you know this is a good author. I love the way this book starts, jumps right into the action, no introduction, anything, and you have to kind of listen carefully to figure out the clues of what kind of world you're in and what's going on and who these characters are. For years afterward, all I remembered was the snake. I heard its hiss first. The soft sss barely registered over my panting, the thumping of my heart. I ignored it, thinking the sound was blood rushing in my ears. Or maybe it was the old man huddled next to me in the bedroom, both of us squeezed inside the long wicker basket, his own chest heaving out of breath. We'd sprinted a full mile before breaking into that house, looking for a place to hide. I was 6 years old at the time. I'd been with the old man for a month and a half, and though he'd begun to teach me his trade, I wasn't any good at it yet, so we did a lot of running back then. The air in the basket was cloying, scented with musk. I remember thinking it was an odd smell for a clothes hamper. Too strong, too animal. I curled up in a ball, breathing into my sleeve, trying to fend off the reek and muffle my breath at the same time. But the hissing in my ears wasn't me. I realized that the moment the snake touched me. It slithered over my foot. Startled, I jerked my leg, but the snake had already wrapped around my ankle. It wound its way up my calf, its hiss growing louder, more insistent. I reached for the old man beside me. My left hand grasped his shirt. My right still clutched the enchanted coin we'd swindled from the spice merchant. Its edge dug into my fingers, the emperor's face pressed against my palm. It glowed, that coin, shining through my skin, giving my flesh a faint halo of blue. The old man said nothing. He peered through the gaps in the wicker, listening as the front door banged open below. Heavy boots clomped on the floorboards. Whoever owned this home was out, unable to protest as the stickmen, the city guard, began tearing the place apart. I barely listened. The snake climbed higher, up to my untucked shirt. It slithered inside, smooth scales slinking around my waist. I couldn't take it. I had to scream. I knew if I did, the stickmen below would find us, and that would be so much worse. But I had to scream. I had to. Suddenly, the old man leaned into me, his breath hot on my ear.
"Did I ever tell you the story?"
he whispered.
"Fox and Bear and the Crystal Stream?"
Terror froze a scream on my lips.
"The stickmen! They'll hear you!"
I wanted to say, but my tongue wouldn't move. My mouth was dry and bitter. A bottle shattered downstairs, shards of glass plinking across the floorboards. One of the stickmen cursed in a gravelly voice.
"Do you think they're hiding in the wine? Idiot!"
The snake coiled higher. It slid over my stomach, my sides, the scars that covered my back. My scars hurt. They always hurt, but as I listened to the crashing of the stickmen below, my scars burned with the memory of how they'd got there. And still the snake slithered upward.
"It's a good story," the old man whispered, "from long ago, when Fox and Bear were still friends. One day Shuna the Fox, the patron spirit of merchants and thieves, and Arthur the Bear, the patron spirit of spellweavers, were atop the snowy mountain." "Be quiet, old man," I thought. "One bear said to her friend, 'Let's have a race. Fastest one down the mountain wins.'" "Be quiet." Shuna looked up at the bear with a grin. "What will I win?" she asked.
The snake squeezed me as it climbed, sliding over the scars on my ribs.
"The bear laughed, the old man said, his words coming faster and faster. The race is not yet run, Shuna, but if you'd like a wager, I have some honey. And I saw you picking strawberries yesterday. Whoever wins gets the lot. What are you doing? Be quiet! Be quiet! Shuna decided this was a good bet. After all, though the bear was big and strong, the fox was agile, and she knew that she was faster than her friend. No sooner had Fox agreed. One of the stickmen reached the steps. He'd run out of things to smash downstairs. Now he was coming up. Then the bear leaped from her rock and into the crystal stream, flowing through the snow down the mountainside. Arthur rumbled with delight as the river carried her away. The stickman kicked the door open across the hall. He flipped the furniture, leaving no hiding place unsearched. The snake reached my collarbone. It slid from my shirt, around my neck, over my ear. The fox was dismayed, the old man whispered. Arthur tricked me, she grumbled. She knew she couldn't follow her friend into the water because it was too cold and too fast, and the fox was not as good a swimmer as the bear. Still, she didn't want to give up. Crash! So down the mountain beside the stream, down, down, down she went so fast she didn't look where she was going, and so the fox didn't spot the snake until it was too late. Boots thudded outside. Before Shuna could move, the snake grabbed the little fox. It wrapped her tight, so tight she could barely breathe. The snake hissed at her, reared back and opened its jaws, ready to swallow her whole. The second pair of boots came up the stairs. You checked this room yet? The gravel-voiced stickman said. In the faint light shining through the weave of the wicker, I saw the snake hovering before my face. Its tongue flickered the barest inch from my eye. The fox knew, the old man whispered. The bear was too far away to help her, and wrapped up as she was, she had no hope to fight. So when the snake brought its head down and met Shuna eye to eye, Fox spoke first. Please, friend, Shuna said, don't hurt me. And the snake said. The door to our room smashed open. I stared, terrified, past the shadow of the snake, through the wicker at the squat-nosed stickman who stomped inside. The man wore the olive and gray of the Paris City Watch. In his hand was his truncheon, the iron-studded club that gave the stickman their name. His barker, a percussion pistol, hung from his belt. He began to topple the furniture, searching the room. A cabinet crashed to the ground. Its glass front shattered so close I felt the pressure thud my ears. The rattling riled the snake. Wrapped around my neck, it squeezed. Its hiss pierced my ears, the world itself trembling with the sound. I couldn't decide which was the worst way to die, the snake's venom or the stickman's club. In my terror, I only thought of the old man's story. What Shuna the fox, patron spirit of merchants and thieves, had said. When I spoke, there was no sound, not even a whisper, just what little breath could pass my lips as the snake throttled my neck. Please, friend, I said, don't hurt me. The snake hovered, bobbing back and forth, tongue flicking my skin. Beside me, the old man sat frozen. Through the basket, I watched the squat-nosed man approach. He reached out, and his companion yanked him back. Are you addled? The gravel voice said, shaking his comrade. That's a snake's roost. Can't you hear inside? Squat-nose froze. He listened, and in the silence heard the angry hiss that filled my ears. The governor said to search everywhere, the man said, embarrassed but defiant. They could be hiding in there, they could. Well, if they are, the gravel voice said, they're dead already. So's unless you want to join them, let's go. They left the room. They tossed the rest of the home for another minute before giving up and moving next door. The instant the stickmen were gone, the old man pushed the lid off the hamper. Now I could see the snake that held me. It was a coppery color, mottled rings all down its scales. I stared into round, black eyes. Slowly, carefully, the old man held his hand out to the snake. That's a good girl. Come on now, he murmured.
The snake turned toward him. Its tongue flicked at his fingers. Then its body loosened its grip, slithering onto the old man's arm. It hissed at him, but made no move to strike. The old man kept his eyes on the snake as he spoke quietly.
"What are you waiting for, boy? An invitation to the ball?"
I scrambled from the hamper, tumbling to the floorboards, scampering away on all fours. I huddled in the corner, sobbing in panicked relief. Carefully, the old man climbed out after me, then laid his arm on the bottom of the basket. The snake slithered off him, giving one final angry sss that made the old man back away, hands raised. Quickly, he slammed the lid on the basket, trapping the snake inside. Then he turned to me, calm as ever.
"Where's the coin?" he said.
It took a second to remember what he was talking about. Wordlessly, I opened my hand. The emperor's visage glowed in blue in my palm. At its edge, the coin was tinged red. My blood. I'd gripped that thing so tightly, it had cut my fingers. The old man took it. He wiped off the blood with an overturned bedsheet, then held up the coin, peering at the enchantment. He grinned.
"Not bad, boy. Not bad at all."
If you haven't guessed already, Callan, the little boy, 6 years old, and the old man are thieves. Or in the book, they're called gaffers. And they pull a gaff when they play a trick. We might also call them a scam artist or a scammer these days. But that is what they do. They trick people out of their magic coins or their valuable jewelry or their money, whatever they can get. Sometimes people hire them to do that if they want something valuable that someone else has. The old man found the boy lying in a ditch. The little boy had been beaten by the stickmen, and that's why he has all those scars all over his body. He had stolen an apple because he was hungry and starving. His parents are nowhere to be found. He's an orphan. So the old man takes him in and begins to teach him the art of being a gaffer. How to watch people carefully, to watch their raised eyebrows, their eye contact, their body language, to read them so they can know what's really going on and know when their tricks work. Wasn't that an exciting entry? Just jumping right into the story with a story about the snake and the legend of Shuna and Artha and all of the mythology of this world. The patron spirit of the merchant and thief is Shuna the fox. Then the story jumps forward 8 years, and Callan is on his own. He's still a gaffer, still pulling tricks, and he had just come home from a particular trick where he'd spent 3 months trying to steal a valuable necklace, an enchanted necklace, off a rich woman. And he was finally able to do that, and when he came home, he found a letter waiting for him, another assignment, another gaff to pull. But this one is particularly interesting and particularly dangerous. Here is the letter that he received. On this, the 17th of New Day, rebirth 4211. Did you catch that? It's a different name for a month, New Day, and rebirth 4211. That's a whole different, that's like our saying June 1st, 2022. It's a whole new names for years, a new number for years, and a new month. That's a sure sign that this is a fantasy novel, that we are in a different world at a different time. Now the letter goes on. Master Callan, I hope this letter finds you well. I am in urgent need of a young man with a particular set of talents, the very same talents that, I have heard on good authority, you possess. If you desire employment, I invite you to visit my home in Carlo. Naturally, I will compensate you for your time. I can offer 2,000 crowns to speak with me, plus substantial additional payment if you agree to the job. 2,000 crowns just for a meeting, and then more money if he agrees to the job? This is a dream come true. This is more money than Callan has ever made on a gaff. The letter continues. As noted, there is considerable urgency to my request. Our meeting must take place on the 20th of New Day. To ensure our rendezvous, I have secured you a booth on the Malley. The ticket accompanying this letter can be used on any voyage up until the morning of our engagement. If my terms are agreeable, please arrive at 444 Remlin Street, Carlo, at 10 o'clock in the morning. There I hope to make your acquaintance. Cordially, Mr. Solomon. It's a lot of money, and it's a chance to ride on an airship, which Callan has never done. But Callan also begins to think that this could be some kind of a trap. It has the 3 pillars of a good gaff, a good trick that the old man taught him: need, greed, and speed. Callan has a need for money, and greed, it's a lot of money, plus speed, there's a deadline. Callan is going to have to decide quickly whether or not he wants to take Mr. Solomon up on his offer. So he's a little suspicious, but he's going to take his chances. And the next day, he boards the airship Mally for a ride to Carlo. Callan arrives at Mr. Solomon's mansion shortly before their assigned meeting time. And as he meets Mr. Solomon, Callan begins to use his powers of observation and his talent for being able to read people and see more than just what their words are saying. And he says immediately, "Your ancestors were weavers, and so are you." Mr. Solomon says, "You are correct. I am a weaver as well, though I prefer to think of myself as a weaver with a small w. I know the art. The weavers of today," I could hear the capital letters in his voice, "are dilettantes playing at magic." And then Mr. Solomon has a question for Callan. "Do you know what it is that the weavers do?" I shrugged. "Not much. I know you enchant things. I know it's done by binding the souls of living creatures. The greater the soul energy, the longer or stronger the enchantment. But they don't last forever, and it's illegal to steal the souls of people." "That's largely accurate. Though it's not just souls. The energy from any living thing will bind an enchantment. Plants, for example, or the foam that grows on the sea. And while it's illegal to take someone else's life, you can. You can even draw the energy from your own life." "It won't kill you?" "It will if you go too far. It's not something less skilled should experiment with. One needs to know where the limits are. But it can be done. The question is, regardless of where you draw the life energy, do you know how it is bound?" I shook my head. "Runes. Weaver runes must be engraved, carved, or painted on the object in question. It is a combination of runes and life energy that creates the bond and forms the enchantment." The old man had always told Callan to beware of the weavers and not to trust them. They're a tricky lot. But Callan decides he's going to continue and see what else Mr. Solomon has in store for him. Then Mr. Solomon says, "Very good. In that case, it's time to meet the rest of the team." Well now, he was just full of surprises. "Your letter didn't mention anyone else," I said. "I didn't think it wise to put the details in writing. This won't be a problem, will it?" I shrugged, as if it were no big thing, but in truth I wasn't sure. I'd only ever worked with the old man before. Could a team Mr. Solomon picked be trusted? What if they weren't any good? Was I supposed to risk my neck for strangers? Mr. Solomon takes him into the study, and there he meets the rest of the team. They were all children. Callan, of course, Mariel and Foxtail, 2 girls, then Gareth, Oren of Sligach, and Lachlan. Each one has a special talent or gift that is unique to them and will be great for the team as they begin this assignment for Mr. Solomon. Finally, after receiving their 2,000 crowns for just meeting with him, Mr. Solomon begins to tell them about the assignment. "Then let's begin. I want you to steal a jewel for me. This jewel is currently in the possession of a particularly talented weaver, and I need it in my hands by the end of the week." "A weaver," Lachlan said. Apparently the boy didn't realize he had already been in the home of one. "Indeed. That's why, if you succeed, I am willing to pay you handsomely. I'll give you 2 million crowns. "Tell us more about the jewel." "It has had many names over the years," Mr. Solomon said, "but most weavers call it the eye. It looks like it's made of amber, about half the size of your palm, and it's shaped like a lens, curved on one side, almost flat on the other." "What does it do?" "That's not your concern. Mr. Solomon had said it pleasantly enough, but his words made the rooms go a little cold. Reading the change in temperature, Mr. Solomon spread his hands and smiled. The eye has a particular value to me and very little to most others. It can't harm you, if that's what you're asking. I'd been watching Mr. Solomon carefully since I'd arrived. He'd always held eye contact as he spoke, but there, right at the end, he had looked away, which made it almost certain that he was lying. As the children learn more about this assignment, learn more about the eye and how to steal it, it dawns on them. They realize the person, the weaver from whom they're going to steal it. It's the High Weaver himself, 𝐷𝑒𝑟𝑒𝑛 the Seventh. This is how someone once described him to Callan. He's ruthless. He's killed off more of his rivals than a boiler snake. Even the emperor is afraid of him. I think he experiments on people. The more Callan hears about this job, this gaff, the more he hears the old man's voice in his head saying, this is a trap. Take the 2,000 crowns and run. But Callan decides he's going to take it. He's going to risk it because it'll be more money than he'll ever see again. So he decides to take it. And so do the other 5 children. And they become a team. And there's a deadline. Remember? Need, greed, and speed. They only have a few days to prepare, train, and plan to steal the eye. This is an exciting story. Action in every chapter. The Children of the Fox. This is called the Thieves of Shadow novel, a new series by Kevin Sands. Our second book today is called 𝑆𝑎𝑣𝑣𝑦, 𝑆AVVY, by Ingrid Law. It's a Newbery Honor book from a few years ago, and it's one of my favorite read-alouds. I love to share it with people because I love the way Ingrid Law describes things. Her descriptions have a lot of emotion in it and a lot of feeling. And this is a fantasy book. There is magic in it. But in contrast to Children of the Fox, which seem to be in another place and another time, a whole different world from ours, the magic in this story happens to be closer to home. It happens in the United States in more modern times. This is the story of Mississippi Beaumont, and she's getting ready to celebrate her 13th birthday. Now, anybody getting ready to become a teenager might be a little anxious about their birthday and what the year ahead will be. But in this family, turning 13 means something a little bit more. Chapter 1. When my brother Fish turned 13, we moved to the deepest part of inland because of the hurricane and, of course, the fact that he'd caused it. I had liked living down south on the edge of land next to the pushing, pulling waves. I had liked it with a mighty kind of liking, so moving had been hard. Hard like the pavement the first time I fell off my pink two-wheeler and my palms burned like fire from all of the hurt just under the skin. But it was plain that Fish could live nowhere near or nearby or next to or close to or on or around any largish body of water. Water had a way of triggering my brother and making ordinary everyday weather take a frightening turn for the worse. Unlike any normal hurricane, Fish's birthday storm had started without warning. One minute my brother was tearing papers from presents in our backyard near the beach, and the next minute both Fish and the afternoon sky went a funny and fearsome shade of gray. My brother gripped the edge of the picnic table as the wind kicked up around him, gaining momentum and ripping the wrapping paper out of his hands, sailing it high up into the sky with all of the balloons and streamers rolling together and disintegrating like a birthday party in a blender. Groaning and cracking, trees shuddered and bent over double, uprooting and falling as easily as sticks in wet sand. Rain pelted us like gravel thrown by a playground bully as windows shattered and shingles ripped off the roof. As the storm surged and the ocean waves tossed and churned, spilling raging water and debris farther and farther up the beach, Mama and Papa grabbed hold of Fish and held on tight, while the rest of us ran for cover. Mama and Papa knew that what was happening. They had been expecting something like this and knew that they had to keep my brother calm and help him ride out this storm. That hurricane had been the shortest on record, but to keep the coastal towns safe from our Fish, our family had packed up and moved deep inland, plunging into the very heart of the land and stopping as close to the center of the country as we could get. There, without big water to fuel big storms, Fish could make it blow and rain without so much heartache and ruin. Settling directly between Nebraska and Kansas in a little place all our own just off Highway 81, we were well beyond hollering distance from the nearest neighbor, which was the best place to be for a family like ours. The closest town was merely a far-off blur across the highway and was not even big enough to have its own school or store or gas station or mayor. Monday through Wednesday, we called our thin stretch of land I can't say it. Kansaska. Thursday through Saturday, we called it Nabranzas. On Sundays, since it was the Lord's Day, we called it nothing at all out of respect for His creating our world without the lines already drawn on its face, like all my grandpa's wrinkles. If it weren't for old Grandpa Bamba, Kansaska Nabranzas wouldn't have even existed for us to live there. When Grandpa wasn't a grandpa and was just instead a small fry, hobbledehoy boy blowing out 13 dripping candles on a lopsided cake, his savvy hit him hard and sudden, just like it did to Fish that day on the backyard birthday party and the hurricane, and the entire state of Idaho got made. At least that's the way Grandpa Bamba always told the story.
Before I turned 13, he'd say, Montana bumped dead straight into Washington, and Wyoming and Oregon shared a cozy border.
That was Grandpa's savvy. My savvy hadn't come along yet, but I was only 2 days away from my very own 13 dripping candles, though my mama's cakes never lopped to the side or to the middle. Mama's cakes were perfect, just like Mama, because that was her savvy. Mama was perfect. Anything she made was perfect. Everything she did was perfect. Even when she messed up, Mama messed up perfectly. I often reckoned what it would be like for me. My savvy is going to be a good one, I told my brother Rocket. I just know it. Girls don't get the powerful jujus, said Rocket, running one hand through his dark shock of unkempt hair with a crackle of static. Girls only get quiet, polite savvies, sugar and spice and everything humdrum savvies. It's boys who get the earth-shaking kinds of savvy. I had scowled at my brother and stuck out my tongue. Rocket and I both knew that there were plenty of girls climbing the family tree that had strong and sturdy savvies, like Grandaunt Jules, who could step back 20 minutes every time she sneezed, or second cousin Olive, who could melt ice with a single red-hot stare. Rocket was 17 and full of junk that I wasn't allowed to say until I got much, much older. But he was electric through and through, and that had always gone to his head. For fun, Rocket would make my hair stand on end like he'd rubbed it with a balloon, or hit Fish with a wicked zap from the other side of the room. But Rocket could keep the lights on when the power went out. And our family sure liked that, especially the littler Beaumonts. Rocket was the oldest, with Fish and me following after. Born only a year apart, Fish and I were nearly the same height and looked a lot alike, both with hair like sand and straw, hair like Mama's. But while I had Papa's hazel eyes, Fish had Mama's ocean blue ones. It was as if we'd each taken a little bit of Mama or a little bit of Papa and made up the rest on our own. I wasn't the youngest or the smallest in the family. Broody Sampson was a dark and shadowy 7, and doll-faced Gypsy was 3. It was Gypsy who started calling me Mibs when my full name, Mississippi, became far too much for her toothsome toddler tongue to manage. The itch and scritch of birthday buzz was about all I was feeling on the Thursday before the Friday before the Saturday I turned 13. Sitting at the dinner table next to Papa's empty chair and ready plate, I barely ate a bite. I pushed the food around my plate, ignoring my sister and daydreaming about what it would be like when I got my very own savvy, when the telephone rang right in the middle of pot roast, mashed potatoes, and mighty unpopular green beans. As Mama rose to answer, us kids, and Grandpa Bamba too, seized a chance to plop our mashers on top of our beans, while Mama's back was turned. Samson tucked some of those beans into his pockets to give to his dead pet turtle, even though Mama had said he shouldn't be giving it any of our good food, seeing how it was dead and all, and the food would just go to rot. But Samson was sure as sadly sure that his turtle was only hibernating, and Mama hadn't the heart to toss it from the house. We were all smiling to each other around the kitchen table at the smart way we'd taken care of those beans, when Mama dropped the phone with a rattling clatter and a single sob, perfectly devastated. "It's Papa," Mama said in a choked voice as her perfect features stretched and pinched. A gust of wind burst from Fish's side of the table, blowing everyone's hair and sending our paper napkins flying pell-mell onto the floor. The air in the room grew warm and humid, as though the house itself had broken out into a ripe, nervous sweat. Outside it was already raining fish rain. Drops hastened from a sprinkle to a downpour in seconds, as Fish stared, wide-eyed and gaping, like his namesake, holding back his fear, but unable to scumble his savvy. "Mama?" Rocket ventured. The air around him crackled with static, and his t-shirt clung to him like socks to towels straight from the dryer. The lights in the house pulsed, and blue sparks popped and snapped at the tips of his nervous, twitching fingers. Mama looked at Papa's empty chair and waiting plate. Then she turned to us, chin trembling, and told us about the accident on the highway. She told us how Papa's car had gotten crushed up bad like a pop can under a cowboy boot, and how he'd gone and forgotten to get out before it happened, landing himself in a room and a bed in Selina Hope Hospital, where he now lay broken and asleep, not able to wake up. As Mib sits at the dining room table, taking in the news of Papa's accident and watching the wind blow around the room and the sparks flying from Rocket's fingertips, she realizes she's not going to get the special birthday that she wanted. Rocket and Mama immediately made plans to go to Selina, to the hospital where Papa is, and so there won't be a special birthday cake, and everybody's mind is going to be on Papa, and they're not going to pay attention to her savvy when it comes in. And just for a second, she's angry. But then, the anger is overtaken by fear and worry, and hopes that Papa will recover. So on the Saturday, when her savvy is supposed to come in, her 13th birthday, it starts out very quietly. I woke up early on that Saturday morning of my 13th birthday and lay still and silent for a long, long while, just waiting. Nothing felt too different yet. I couldn't see through the ceiling or turn on my lamp with a blink or a wink. I couldn't float off my mattress or make my pillows disappear. I sighed and drummed my fingers against the pattern of my sheets. Nothing was happening, at least not yet. I decided it was safe to get up. I rolled out of bed, glancing at Gypsy, where she lay in a nest of stuffed animals and pillows. There wasn't a creak from the floorboards or a groan from the bed springs, but the moment my bare feet touched the floor and I stood to untwist my nightgown, my sister sat up and rubbed her eyes, staring at me from her own small bed. "Go back to sleep, Gypsy," I said. No, said Gypsy, repeating her most favorite word and rubbing her eyes stubbornly. "It's too early to be awake. Close your eyes. It's off to dreamland for you again." I crossed the room to nestle her back under the blankets, then left our bedroom quickly before Gypsy could make a fuss. I was careful not to make too much noise as I stole past the other rooms and slipped downstairs, not wanting to wake anybody else up just yet, wanting more time to myself to see what I could see, feel what I could feel. In the kitchen, I fixed myself a bowl of cereal and took it with me into the next room to sit cross-legged on the sofa while I ate. No sooner had I gotten myself settled, balancing my bowl on my knee just right, than I heard a thump. Thump, thump, thump. I sat perfectly still, straining my eyes out across the dim room, the morning light shifting orange from pink, casting a pastel glow across Mama's stacks of paintings and glinting off the glass aquarium of Samson's dead pet turtle. Thump. Thump. I set my bowl down on the floor with a splish-splash of milk sloshing up over the side, and followed the thumping around until my nose was nearly pressed up against the aquarium. There, in the tank, Samson's turtle was not dead so much as living, trying its unsuccessful best to find a way up the side of the glass. So, that turtle had been hibernating after all, I thought to myself. I knew that Samson would be happy. Well, as happy as his moody, broody self ever got, that is. But why had that turtle picked that particular persnickety moment to wake up? Watching the turtle, I tapped on the glass. Thinking about the turtle and remembering the unusual way Gypsy had woken up as I'd stepped out of bed, a shaky and suspicious feeling started to gnaw deep down in my bones. A feeling that stuck with me the rest of the morning and continued to grow like smoke from a grass fire. That's it. That's her savvy. She can wake things up. And then she began to think, wait a minute. Papa is in a coma in a hospital. He's sleeping. If I can get to Selena, I can go to the hospital and wake up Papa. A well-meaning church lady has planned a birthday party for Mibs that afternoon. She kind of feels sorry for Mibs because her mama is away on her 13th birthday. And at the church, Mibs sees an opportunity, a way to get to Papa. She stows away in the back of a van of a Bible salesman, and off she goes on her quest, on her grand trip to Selena to see her Papa and to use her savvy to bring him back from his coma. But you know what? That's not her savvy. Waking up things that are sleeping is not her savvy, and she realizes it along the way. Now what's she going to do? How is she going to wake up Papa? Will the savvy she discovers be able to do it? To find out, you can read Savvy by Ingrid Law. This is part of a series or a group of companion novels all about the Beaumont children and what happens when they get their savvies. Well, that's it for another edition of Chapter Book Storytime Variety Pack. I'm so glad you joined me today. We read Savvy by Ingrid Law and also Children of the Fox. It's part of a series called The Thieves of Shadow, and it's by Kevin Sands. Children of the Fox is a new book to EVPL, so it's only available in print. Savvy is available as a playaway and also in print. Thank you for joining me. We'll see you in a few weeks. Thank you. Bye-bye.